kind of wanted it to be like an adventure. You know what I mean? Like those are to me like adventure tropes. You know what I mean? It's like the unspoken thing is like we have a mission, right? And it's an impossible one, but we have to try.
I'm excited to chat today with Michael Clowater, the writer director of Drive Back Home, which I absolutely adored. Michael, it's such a wonderful film. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
I'm happy to. Thanks for talking and thanks for liking the movie.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a wonderful film. It's both funny in times and hard to watch in others, certainly. Where did it come from? I know it opens with telling that it's a true story.
Yeah, so it's definitely was inspired by a true story. The true story part of it is that my grandfather was a plumber in New Brunswick, and at one point, I believe in like the 1950s, he got a phone call that his brother had been arrested in Montreal for having sex with another man in a park, and my grandfather had to drive up and get him and go back home. And that's sort of where the true story part of it ends. That's sort of why it was kind of inspired by that. But the other parts of the story that were true is that, you know, my grandfather had a grade four education. My great uncle had, finished high school and was a middle manager at the Bank of Montreal. And so there was like a really interesting dynamic between them um, from an education standpoint. And these two men were, they didn't really like each other throughout their life. You know what I mean? Like the stories I'd always heard about them was that they were quite jerky to each other a lot. But the other part that was true is they were always in each other's lives, you know? And so what I always say to people is that like where the idea for the story came was, I like the idea of I love stories where people are trying to figure themselves out a little bit. Like it's not like they're climbing this giant mountain about changing laws or anything like that. It's more just like for this, it's a story of like how do I how do I love somebody that I don't like? And that goes for both brothers. And that I think is that's all they get to. You know what I mean? Like I've always sort of built it as it's a love story between two brothers. And when I was writing it, because I had taken pre-pandemic, I had taken a few stabs at writing it, and it was never coming out the way I wanted. And then at one point, it's that sort of classic writer thing of like, why is somebody doing something? And the thing I kept getting hung up on is like, why does Weldon go? If Weldon doesn't like him, why does he go? And if Perley doesn't like him, 1970, like, and he makes pretty good money, like, why does he get in the truck and go back? And what I came down to was just the simpler it is, the more honest it is, and the better it is. And the reason Weldon goes is because his mom tells him to. Full
Yeah.
stop. No, nothing more than that. And the reason Perley goes is because Perley wants to. Because one of the things Alan and I talked about a lot, that his motivation for getting in the truck is I think loneliness is a big theme in the movie, right? And people wanting to have connection with each other. And so one of the things Alan and I talked about is that Perley is a character in this moment in time that feels like he has one person in the entire world that cares about him, and that's his mother. And she's older and she's going to die one day. And what does the world look like when no one cares about you? And that is terrifying. And so that's why Pearlie gets in the truck. Like that's why he wants to get in the truck, even if it's subconscious. He gets in there because he wants to make a connection with Weldon, and that was it.
Yeah, and
That got a little rambly. I don't know if that answered enough.
no, no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful because that's such it like it is such a key question to the film is that but yet the brother is the name that he gave. The
That's right.
his
Yeah.
brother it's the only name that he gives to the police.
Hmm.
There's this beautiful tension here, and even I mean the title even is Drive Back Home, but home is not a safe space, or is it like, or necessary, or has been in the past
That's right. Yeah.
for Alan's character.
Hmm.
And so I would ask too, like what is it? What do we as you're writing the script, you're preparing this story, you talk about the two brothers, your grandfather and his brother. as well. How do we manage the a home situation like this when there is such tension? You know, how do we keep a family together when they seem to be pulling each other apart?
Well, so that was another big question that we were doing it too. And I think the thing that often doesn't get talked about is how big a role Ada plays in this. And Ada is played by Claire Coulter, who is like, I'm in love with Claire. Like I think she's such an amazing actor. And 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 she's the third part of this that is really important. And so, the film starts off with the funeral of the father of
Yeah,
the thing. And one of the things that Claire and Charlie and Al and I talked a lot about is that, this family got broken, in the flashback scenes. And it broke and it couldn't be repaired. And now everyone's getting older in life and the father dies. And that is sort of that's the blockage to any sort of chance of the family repairing. So one of the scenes that I'm the most proud of is the scene that Charlie and Alan aren't in, and Claire does it with Gray Powell, who plays Moses, and they have the conversation about why is Perley coming home, right?
yeah,
And um, and the and there was something happened on set that I didn't plan for. This came from Claire, is that after she gets into a fight with Moses and Moses storms off, Claire just stands there and has this amazing look of doubt on her face. Like, I have no idea if this is going to work. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. And one of my favorite lines in the movie is when she says to Moses, "You sound just like him, Perley." And he says, "I'm nothing like him." And she's like, "No, I mean senior." And then everyone stops for a beat. And he says, "That's the meanest thing you've ever said to me." And that line, I think Gray delivers that so well. And Claire, I just think is so amazing in that, because in that one close up back to her, you can see, I see in her eyes like the pretend confidence. Do you know what I mean? Like the bluster that she's trying to put on, like, no, I meant that and I'm doing this, but she's doubtful. You know what I mean? And that was something that Claire brought to it that I didn't really, it wasn't on the page. You know what I mean? Like that doubt that the mother had. So so that's the part of, you're saying the home is not a safe space. That's all from Ada. And Ada is saying this can be a safe space. And you and I, Weldon, we need to try because we screwed up. You know what I mean? Like we let this happen. We weren't strong enough to stop this person. And now we have a chance. And that's where I kind of wanted it to be like an adventure. You know what I mean? Like those are to me like adventure tropes. You know what I mean? It's like the unspoken thing is like we have a mission, right? And it's an impossible one, but we have to try. And that's the mission. And and that's why I was saying like I tried to think of it in terms of, like almost trying to think of it like a Western. It gives it that adventure quality to it of a mission movie. And you don't have to say it, but I think if you keep that in the back of your head as the spine of it, it doesn't, I don't hope it doesn't feel slow or pokey. It has a momentum that's moving forward in a storytelling way, and you don't know if it's going to work, and you don't know if it isn't. And that was it. That was another long answer. Sorry about
no,
that.
I love it. I love it. This is
Um,
great. But no, I love what you're saying here because, and I actually love that you brought up that line because I was going to bring up that moment because that is there's such weight in that space.
mhm,
You remind me of Pearly Senior, and it just, like you said, they sit there, and that moment, that beat just weighs
mhm,
everything. It just you feel
right.
the heat. It's absolutely stunning. Because I mean that's so much of this film. I actually to add to that too. There's that wonderful film where there or wonderful moment where the truck stops, and they say, "Well, where I don't know which way to go. Go forward
Mm.
or go back," which is obviously literal, but it feels like more. So I guess I would ask, in your mind, like here we have these things. We have these two brothers who are, weighed or burdened by their own emotional trauma, by their own struggles, by their own, anger, hurt, and all of these things. In your mind, what do you think it means to go forward in
So,
these spaces?
so that line is, that was sort of the one line in the film where I was like, is it too on the nose? You know what I mean? But then in the end, I didn't care. I was like, that's my John.
Perfect.
I would say that's our John Wayne line. You know what I mean? Like it's like you're John Wayne. We're going back. We're going forward. And that's the moment where Charlie buys in, like, or where sort of Weldon buys in, and
Mm,
that's what that line meant. The line meant is like we are a couple of dummies. I don't know how this is going to go. I have never been fully on board. I've been doing this because my mom told me to, or our mom told us to.
yeah.
And then it's like we're going forward. I'm not giving up on you. You know what I mean? And that's basically he's decided to do that. And so one of the things with that line, I don't know if you noticed, but like Hayden, the singer songwriter that did the soundtrack, um, we talked a lot about the music and how it works in conjunction with that line.
Mm,
And it's like adventure music that comes on after that
yeah, it
as
does.
they're sort of going on their thing. And that's, yeah, it's like sort of, you call it false confidence, you call it whatever, but it was sort of what they needed to go. And that was what it was.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but I did notice in the music, I thought it really, I wouldn't have thought, I hadn't labeled it as adventure music, but now that you say that, I know exactly what you're talking about because I noticed in the music there was this general sense of, okay, now we're in it. Uh,
Hmm.
and we're going forward. I thought that it hits like to me it wasn't too on the nose. To me it was the perfect tone for where they were in the film because they've come so far. And whether or not they're going to keep going themselves,
Hmm.
not just to get home, but to figure this out, I think
Hmm.
is incredibly poignant for these characters.
Well, the other line in the film that I really like, and I'm happy with how it turned out, is like there's a theme in the movie that I hopefully people don't like pick up in a conscious way, but maybe they do in an unconscious way. Is I wanted the idea of God and religion to be
Mm,
part of this throughout, right? And so, it starts off in a church at the
mm,
funeral, and everybody doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're just going through the motions because this is what we do. And even when Weldon has to give a speech, he's basically saying, like, you know, I don't even know why we're here. Like, we're not here for him. We're here for each other to say goodbye. I guess that's what we're doing. And he's that kind of a person that he doesn't really know what to say. So he just says what he thinks, right? And then the scene right before things break down, when they have that conversation in the motel and they talk about Archangel, their cousin Archangel,
yeah.
and where that name came from. And that's my mom has a cousin named Archangel. And I
Oh,
asked my
really?
mom, yeah. And all of those nicknames in that thing are all real nicknames. Like one of them is my father, uncles, like Sid is his name's Richard, Clarence is my aunt, like these are just my family is a nickname family.
Right.
And so I asked my mom, I said, why is her name Archangel? And my mom said, I don't know, it's her name. Like that was it. It's just like for her, it was just normal. And so I kind of invented the meaning behind it. And so when they talk about Archangel, you know, um, what they're really talking about is there a God, right?
Mm,
And Perley's saying that's a stupid name. There's no God. There's nothing like this. It's just like she's a show off. She's doing whatever. And then Weldon has a chance to like, get mad at Perley and say, you think you're the only one with problems.
mm.
Lots of people have problems. This is why she named her this. This is why she did it. And then the line that I'm talking about that I like is when Perley comes around and he says, do you think it worked? Do you think that name really worked? And Weldon says, "Are you allowed to swear on this? Is this
You go ahead.
okay?" And Weldon says, "She's a fucking idiot." You know what I mean? And what he's saying there, I think, and I say I think because I don't 100% know, but I think what he's saying is there's no God,
Mm,
right? Like she did this because she it helps her, but there isn't a God. But you have me now. And so I'm here for you. That's why things are different. You're not alone anymore. And that's why Perley smiles. Because I remember when we shot that scene, this is another little moment with the actors. We shot that scene and he did it. And then Alan smiled and I almost yelled cut because I was like, oh my God, you're not supposed to smile. But I stopped myself because I could feel myself liking it. And then before I yelled cut, I was like, actually, I love it. I love you did it because Perley's saying he understands what he's saying. And it's like, and what he's saying is it's okay that there's no God. And then later in the film, after they have the big fight and they're sitting in the car and they don't know what to say to each other. Because I feel like by this time we've already established neither of these guys believe in God.
yeah.
Again, this is all just in my head,
Yeah.
going forward. And then they're sitting there and now they're paralyzed and they don't know what to say. And the Northern Lights come up. And that's the miracle of the film. That's
Mm,
like, is that real? Like, is that just a coincidence that come up? Is that God? Is that God helping us? You know, and I don't know the answer to that question. I think
yeah.
it's coincidence, but I don't know. And I that's sort of how I like thinking about it. I think if you asked Alan or if you asked Charlie, they'd probably give a similar answer. But I like it that it put doubt in their heads. And
Yeah.
that doubt is what made them have the ability to talk. And that when in which in this case they sang
Yeah.
and then they moved forward again. Yeah.
And it's interesting too because, in keeping with that theme, like you said, the church in the church at the beginning is very cold. It's like you said, they don't really care. But the mother, which is it's Claire that's the mother, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Claire.
Yeah.
She becomes sort of the bastion of grace, and demands it of her family,
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. So like she's providing the home for them to return to in the first place. And you could ask those same questions there too, like where is God in that space? And but I think that's a really interesting question to ask about this film, that I hadn't considered it from that way, but I see what you're saying now, and especially the way the Northern Lights come up, it adds that little
Well,
question mark.
yeah. And I think, one of the things I always found interesting is in small towns all across Canada,
Mm,
you know, you'll have the smallest town, it's really poor, there's not a lot of stuff going on there, but the church will be almost like a cathedral.
mm,
And I think there's part of that is like I personally question it. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like it's why. Like the church that we shot in is in Bonfield in near North Bay, and there's like nothing there, but there's this massive church, and it's really the question they're talking about is like, what is more important? Is it the glory of God, or is it just, I guess, the lessons of theology, which are also just lessons of being good to each other, and being decent to each other. And that's sort of the thing of it. Like at the very beginning when the priest says, oh, your husband must have been really well liked because everybody's here. She's like, oh, everyone comes to every funeral. Like that's not why people are here. You know what I mean? They're here
yeah.
because the church tells us we have to do this. We don't really want to. We don't really care. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're going through the paces, you know?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. Honestly, Michael, we're out of time, but I this wonderful conversation, I genuinely appreciate it. And like I said, the film is so special. The performances are so strong across the board, and it's just beautifully, beautifully written. So thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
yeah. No problem. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Okay. All right. Bye, Steve.
Bye bye.